Hey team, on today's episode of the podcast, we have Anthony from Netflix Queer Eye joining me on how to actually put Vegemite into a brownie and also talking about his authentic passion for food and how it's led to so much success. Well, lover of cheese.
Yes.
Anthony from Netflix's Queer Eye, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dude, I'm stoked because actually about 5 minutes ago you said you've never had someone cook for you in content situation, yeah?
I haven't. So I walked back there thinking that I was going to be back there, and I was like, all right, what are we making?
Because you're usually the one cooking, right?
I am, and it's kind of nice to just sit here and see whatever you're going to be making with all of these awesome things out. So,
yeah, it's pretty funny because we've met a couple of times, one of which was at the gym, and you told me that, you know, Vegemite has a connection with you.
It's more than a connection. It's a spiritual connection. So one of my best friends, his name is Andy Weinman. I met him when we were both bartending in Montreal, like 15 years ago. And he's from Melbourne, but now lives in Sydney. And when we used to be very hungover after our shifts, he would take white bread in a toaster just for like a minute, just to get it nice and little golden crispy. And then he would put margarine, which I never tried before I met him, and then Vegemite to the edges, very aggressively, and then a slice of Swiss cheese. And that and a Gatorade was like our savior. And then we would play poker the next day and just eat Vegemite sandwiches.
So you would have sustained energy after a hangover thanks to this beautiful Wonder Bread of Vegemite and Swiss cheese.
Correct. I didn't have that kind of bread growing up. I never heard of Vegemite and I never had margarine. And he like opened up my world to these awesomely weird ingredients.
I just find that so funny. The things that we now find so nostalgic to a sense are the simplest things in life. And Vegemite to me is obviously, it's like oxygen.
It's the world's richest known source of vitamin B, right? It's such a weird promotion. Apparently they used to drop it from airplanes during the war.
Yeah, there's all these different things I talked about to keep the hope and inspiration of the Australians and the Anzacs.
But why is it so big? Okay, so there's Marmite in the UK.
Yep.
Why is Marmite so big there and so big and Vegemite so big in Australia, but like the rest of the world doesn't get it, or they get really grossed out by it?
So here's the thing. I think Vegemite and Marmite are both acquired tastes, right? You either love it or you hate it.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I also think there's like, if you were born in Australia or England, you respectfully, in your blood, either are going to love it to the point where you will have it spiritually every single day. Outside of those countries, people like, you're a unique individual. And to be honest, being Canadian, you have a stronger association with the Commonwealth. So
Correct.
it doesn't actually surprise me to hear you love it. But in USA, most people like hear it like, oh, they're kind of deterred by it. You get every so often, people go, do you have Vegemite and those kind of things. But I don't know what it is. I think it's almost like if you have the passport of any Commonwealth, for some reason you are able to look after
You're more prone to enjoying the mite.
How fun is that? Well, I'm stoked that we have the connection of the mite.
Yeah.
We have a number of different connections. Most importantly, our love for food. I feel that's really cool, dude. So we all, are loved watching what you and the team have done with Queer Eye and people you've inspired. But now you are also building and have built for so long your personal brand outside of that. You bring out a cookbook, which you talk about later. But let's start about you in Canada and how you kind of just fell into food. Was it your family?
Yeah, I think definitely my whole family, like we're all very obsessed with food. I was just with my father and my sister in Vermont. I went to see them for all of 22 hours, and we got to have, had 3 whole meals together. And like when we were eating breakfast, we were trying to figure out like, what are we gonna have for dinner? And that was kind of like what the story was growing up.
Sure.
Like we would obsessively talk about food. My parents traveled a lot when I was a kid, and whenever they would come back from different countries, they would always bring back food. That was like the thing. And also being raised in Montreal, which is like such a multicultural hub
100%.
where like diversity is at the forefront of everything. It was always really important to kind of like explore different foods. So like my palates, even though I was a very picky eater, I was horrible as a kid.
How picky though?
I hated tomatoes.
Okay.
And now I love tomatoes. I hated Polish food. Like hate is a strong word, but that was
It's a very strong word, but you sound very definitive on it.
Very definitive. And I was always obsessed with anything that was American.
Sure.
And then I lived in West Virginia for 3 years. So when I moved there, I was introduced to like easy cheese in a can and all these things that I wasn't allowed to have as a kid because we always had like fancy food.
Right.
So I was upset, like just anything that was like heavily processed was just so fascinating to me that
so
you can have like a
interesting.
packaged treat.
Sure.
And now I've sort of like scaled back and I guess with now that I'm traveling myself and I'm sort of like getting closer to my parents' age when they had me, I'm sort of like finding that appreciation for those things again. Because it's like your parents can force those things on you, but if you don't care, like they wanted me to play the piano. my whole life, and I was like classically trained, but I did not like it. I didn't want to do it, probably just because they made me do it. But then in college, I like revisited it, and I was like, oh, I'm so happy I had this foundation. And I think it's the same thing with food as well.
100%.
As you get older, you appreciate and you respect it more.
Do you still go home and cook?
I do. My father is still king of the grill, and I try to help him. I didn't help him grill this time because we have a bear on the property that's been coming to visit.
An actual bear?
An actual black bear.
Wow.
That looks like a massive dog. And so my sister and I stayed inside, and then he went and he grilled the beautiful New Zealand rack of lamb. And I stuck to the vegetables in the kitchen. And my sister doesn't cook she cooks more now, but she's more of a critic. She tastes everything.
Which is a very still dependable thing for us. We need to know what's going on.
For sure, we need feedback, right?
Well, I think
feedback and validation.
100% validation. Yeah. Without the validation, it's what's the approach? It's a sandwich effect, is it? Like you give negative, positive, then positive, negative, then anyway. Just give us some validation. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I grew up loving food like you with my family, and it actually was the critiquing of spaghetti bolognese that on the Sunday night that the Churchills got together that really got me like loving food and the conversing and whatnot. So that's so cool to hear that your family has really helped the foundation for your love of it. I find it so fascinating though that you go from this probably more real food experience into never having the packaged stuff and the processed things, to being so fascinated by it.
Yeah, because you want what you don't have, right? And it doesn't have to necessarily be good.
No.
But just because it's foreign and it's something that was like such taboo, like we never had junk food at home.
Sure.
So I went through, as soon as I moved out, I was kicked out of my parents' house for being a troublemaker when I was younger. But like I immediately went for like McDonald's and like all this stuff that I wasn't allowed to have because it was just so fascinating.
So you're being rebellious.
It was just rebellion. It was just a rebellious dick, basically.
And so you went from, were you kicked out, what time, how old were you when you got kicked out?
I was 17.
So did you have a job lined up?
I was in university. I was in uni.
You were uni. Thank you very much.
Doing my psychology degree. And then when I finished that, and that's actually when I started cooking, because all our meals were prepared for us by my mother growing up. And we weren't actually my middle sister was allowed to cook, but I wasn't allowed to cook. So I would sit on the other end of the island, not unlike now. So you're kind of like my mother today.
I feel great.
And then I would just like basically like watch her, and I just kind of studied the way that I would watch like food documentaries and like food shows, and just kind of like learn through seeing. And so then when I was alone and I went to IKEA and got all my first pots and pans and like went to kitchen supply stores and got whatever I could afford, I was like, okay, I have to teach myself. I'm going to figure this out. And
did you feel somewhat empowered when I'm sure a lot of the friends at university came across to you and saying, what are you cooking?
I think, yeah. Well, in Montreal, there's also a culture like the dinner party, I think, is something that happens a lot more because it's a very European thing. And I feel like in the States, especially living in New York, like it's shocking how many times I'll have friends over in New York and they're like, whoa, you're making food? I'm like, yeah, you guys are here for dinner. And they're like, I don't remember the last time somebody cooked for me. And like, that's like, we live off of Seamless and Postmates and restaurant food all the time, that like we're not used to having that experience of actually sitting down and like having a meal together. And for me, that was important. Because I was broke, so I couldn't go to restaurants. And then you can make risotto for like under $15 for 8 people. And you can have like an amazing meal, and you can have it at your home, even if you're sitting on the freaking floor. Like, who cares?
Dude, this is exactly why I love my podcast, because I get to have a conversation with people like yourself who, regardless of what they've done, you are talking about the real thing of what food does.
Right.
And that is power right there.
It's a connector.
100%.
It's how you get together at the end of a shitty day and bitch about what exam you failed or paper you didn't turn in or a breakup. It's how you say I love you to someone. It's how you say I'm sorry. It's like, it's a great way to impress somebody. And it's like, it's this forced contact that's kind of manipulative, which I really love.
Yep.
But it's like, you get to make this meal and everyone has to sit around a table, and it's all about family style for me.
100%.
Just like everyone just like digging in, just the
Cobwebs
physicality
of
putting in, like it's so, there's something so nice about that.
Oh man, I feel like you've just created so many testimonials for people in why we should be having food. And I like enjoying it anyway. It's so cool to hear your passion though. I think that more than anything resonates with people, and that's why I guess people love you. Like you have become such a figurehead for so many things and so many movements, but you know, you're known as, I guess, the food and wine expert on Queer Eye, but also now what you're doing with your brands and everything. Everyone loves you because of how passionate you are behind these different modalities.
Thank you. I don't even know what to say that. So
No,
I'm just gonna have a
true,
sip of
man.
my iced oat milk latte using Oatly oat milk. Not an endorsement yet.
We're going to make that happen, and also Vegemite. Now,
let's work on it.
Let's go to, you fast forward, you're in America. Is that how Queer Eye kind of happened? Or was there a few things along the way? Or Ted Allen first?
Yeah, it was a lot of things that made no sense at all. This wasn't part of the plan.
Sure.
So I basically finished university in Montreal.
And of psychology, yeah?
So in psych,
Yeah.
and then I always wanted to be an actor. That's what I wanted to be since I was a little kid.
Cool.
And so I started studying at the Neighborhood Playhouse, which is a conservatory in Midtown, which is like Meisner technique, super traditional. They didn't have a single computer in the school. It was a typewriter. And Clotilde Luce and Beverly Sugarman,
Dude.
real names. They were both like in their 90s, were like our secretaries there. And so that's irrelevant. I ramble, I've had a lot of coffee. And so I was there for 2 years. And then when I graduated, I had my green card at that point. And
that alone that's a big, nice.
It's a big deal.
I'm about to go for mine. So I'm just...
It's a big deal because it's like a sure thing. Well, nothing's a sure thing in this political climate, but like it's kind of a sure thing that you can stay in this country for a while.
Right.
More so than a visa.
Yeah.
And so then I started working in restaurants for about 10 years and going in for auditions all the time and just like working around food the best way that I knew how. I love to perform and I love food, and I sort of like have been like relaying from the kitchen to like clients and just reciting menus. And
so you front of house, yeah?
Yeah.
I think like everyone looks and knows you now. To know that you were doing front of house, you would have killed that job.
I was, so sometimes like I did really enjoy it. I love the culture of a restaurant and sort of like the battle between front and back of house.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like part of me was just too intimidated by working in a kitchen. Also, it was just like thankless hours, and back of house like line cooks work so freaking hard. Yeah. And I had other things that I wanted to do during the day, so I just, waitering was like the best thing that I could do. And I worked from Malaysian restaurant at Fatty Crab to Bond Street Sushi.
That's awesome.
In Montreal, like seafood places. It was like any culture, anything that I could do to kind of, yeah. So I did that for a long time, and then when I moved to Brooklyn, to Clinton Hill, a good buddy of mine, PJ Vogt, was like, you know who lives here? Ted Allen. He's like a huge figure on the Brooklyn food scene, host of Chopped and the OG food and wine guy on Queer Eye. And he was like, I think you should meet him. So I went to Greenlight Bookstore. He had his cookbook that was coming out, and I went and I introduced myself, and he signed his book, and then we started chatting, and we realized we literally lived across the street from each other on the same street in Clinton Hill. And so we started hanging out, and we became fast friends. And then he and his husband basically hired me to like help them with different things. So I started working as a personal assistant, and then I helped Ted with food stuff. I helped Barry, his husband, with like furniture stuff. And I didn't know it at the time, but I started learning about like what scheduling was like for like a TV food personality. Like all of these things that would help me later on. I had no freaking way of knowing. Like I didn't have the idea in my mind that Queer Eye was going to be anything that was rebooted. And food was something that was so personal and sacred. It wasn't anything that I wanted to pursue in a professional capacity. So I left there. I worked as a gallery director for a couple of years. Again, not a linear path. Like none of it it makes sense now, but at the time it didn't make any sense. And then Queer Eye came about, and it was a long casting process, and I booked it. I was shocked, and then my life has completely changed.
Yeah, but you're still the same person.
I try to be. I'm a more caffeinated person, more tired in the circles, and my eyes are a little darker, but I get to lean into my workaholic tendencies. And I don't say that like it's a good thing. I used to say that with pride, but I realize now that it's actually like a total detriment to my health and my well-being. It's like doing too much, yet always thinking that I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, cool. Because you're definitely building your empire, and I mean that with a lot of respect. Restaurant, personal brand partnerships, all this stuff you've got going on outside, and other opportunities with shows and tours. So it's a lot, and learning to say no is so important for
It's the most empowering thing is saying no, and I'm kind of starting to get off on it a little bit, and it's like, I just said no to that.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, exactly.
It feels good. It's starting to feel good. It's like quality over quantity, which was always sort of been my motto. But also like when you go from a life where everything is outgoing, where you're constantly telling people like, hire me, see me, look at me, when you go to auditions, to finally having all the energy be incoming. At first I was like, this is gonna last, I'm gonna have my 5 minutes of whatever this experience is, and it's all gonna go away. And now I'm starting to realize like, okay, or even accepting the fact that like, okay, maybe it's not going to go away overnight, and I can actually sort of scale back and do things that are very meaningful for me.
100%, which is so important to building that personal brand, which is longevity. Like whether or not Queer Eye goes for X amount of years, you're still going to be Anthony, right?
Right.
And so the importance of your health and your well-being is how you then perform for the next 50, 60 years.
100%. And I've always been into healthy food, especially in the past few years. You know, we mentioned you have that, you have Will Cole's book, Ketotarian. I got introduced to that because my sister, she has MS. And so she follows functional medicine.
Great.
Very, very closely. And so I've learned a lot about that as a result, and also have been applying it to my lifestyle as well, because I'm constantly on the go and life is like a total mess that I just, you know, and vanity from having your photo taken all the time. It's like, okay, like I'm gonna start making different choices with like my diet and everything, and I actually realize that I do feel better when I don't have a vat of mac and cheese the night before. I still allow myself to have that,
100%.
but it's sort of, it's all about like picking my battles.
Dude,
It's like weekday Anthony and weekend Anthony are like two different guys. It's very Jekyll and Hyde.
And you need to, you just absolutely summate everything so perfectly. Man, like I was just gonna say, you definitely have to have the balance. I've seen you at the gym, I've seen you lift, you sweat, so you get that balance. You work off that mac and cheese. We're gonna take a quick little break. We're gonna start making some epic baked goods, and I want to learn more about what's the empire that you're building and how the challenges are.
The empire.
The empire. Anthony, dude, due to the fact that you wanted Vegemite, I did want to just go a traditional route of putting Vegemite on a toast. Right?
It wouldn't have been terrible. I wouldn't have been against it, but I appreciate you going the extra
mile.
Right,
of course. It's actually, there is an art to creating Vegemite on toast. As you talked about your fantastic friends spreading right to the edge, the ratio of margarine or butter is so important to the Vegemite. So
and whatever it is for a normal person, I like to double or triple.
Good for you, man.
Yeah,
I'm the same as well. Have you ever had avocado on toast with Vegemite?
It's literally a recipe in my cookbook coming out soon.
Segue!
With a crispy egg and chili flakes and an offensive amount of cilantro.
So slice of bread toasted.
Yep.
Vegemite
with butter.
With butter.
With butter, yeah.
Then avocado.
And then avocado.
Fried egg.
I like it sliced,
okay.
I think. And then a crispy egg, kind of like the Jose Andres method of like the oil really hot in a skillet so that it puffs up nicely.
100%.
The yolk has to be fully cooked, but you cannot have the white goopy boogery jelly. I hate that stuff.
You don't like sunny side up?
I like an over easy.
Ah, okay, cool.
Just steam it lightly at the end.
Okay, for sure.
I don't like the jelly white.
And this is coming from a home cook. I do love that. I love that a home cook can be so particular, which is so important.
Very particular about my eggs.
100%. You should be. You should be. Do you like a poached egg?
I love a poached egg, but again, it's like, it's not, I'm not really good at it. So I like to like stick to what I'm good at. Soft scramble, like a cacio pepe style soft scramble.
Yeah, 100%.
Or a crispy egg where the yolk is runny. Or jajko w kubku, which is like a Polish thing, which is where you soft boil eggs and then you take like half a stick of butter in a mug and you mix up like a bunch of soft boiled eggs and you put a bit of Maldon salt and a lot of pepper and you just eat it out of a cup and you can dip like little brioche points or whatever bread you have.
Is that where it's like almost like a beurre blanc, like buttery sauce with egg in it, as opposed to egg with butter?
It's like a hollandaise with chunky whites in it, basically. Yeah.
Welcome to Life Poland Cooking. Speaking of cooking, my man, we're going to make a brownie. And we love that we're making a chocolate brownie, but we're using the Vegemite for something. We're going to incorporate it and make a salty, sweet brownie using Vegemite. So for those who do not know, Vegemite is the yeast extract we find in Australia. Fantastic, as you heard from Anthony himself, how beautiful it is on a hangovers day, or just any day in general. But all we're going to do is make a really simple brownie mix, and I'm using olive oil. I love using olive oil as a fat as opposed to butter, personally, in baking. I know it's...
Italians do it all the time.
That's
with olive oil cake, and it just has a nice sharpness to it.
And if it's good enough for Italians, it's good enough for us, right?
It's good enough for these two Commonwealthers.
So all I've got to do, man, is just combine them two in a mix master. Perfect. And then, no doubt, you can crack an egg with one hand.
I actually never have.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Should I try?
Yeah, cool. I'll show you how first. So
it's going to be a fail. But...
Clean, what you want to do is clean crack on the egg.
Yep.
And then you want to kind of hold it in cricket ball fashion. Like that. You get a nice little separation, and then you're going to separate using the hinge of the knuckle.
Okay.
Like that.
So there are two schools of thought with cracking an egg.
Well, here we go. Technique.
Some people think that it's bad to do it this way because the shell can get in and having a sharp little thin. Other people think that you should use a flat surface. I may be mistaken, but I feel like Nigella Lawson likes the flat surface.
Nigella does.
And I love watching her cut an onion because she always prefaces it with, I don't know how to cut an onion, but this is how I do it.
Yeah, she's probably cut about 1,000 times.
She's so unapologetic about it too.
She
so does
humane.
not give up. Beep!
No, does not. Have you, do you find her work quite sensual? Oh, he pauses. He pauses.
Okay, Feast is one of the most erotic pieces of literature that I have ever read, and there is literally a whole menu on how to like grieve someone's death like after a funeral with a meal, and she still manages to make that sound sensual.
Yeah, right.
She is the most brilliant writer, editor, like one of like a genius of our time.
There are some theories going out there that she actually wrote 50 Shades of Grey and just removed cooking from it.
I would not be surprised in the least bit, and I will totally propagate that rumor.
Oh my man. Well, let's
Okay.
let's get you. So what I've done, I've got to avoid the shell going
Right.
into this potentially. We've got yourself a mug. All
Right.
right. So let's go.
So
Nice.
it's like this,
Yeah,
right?
nice
and
clean
then,
crack.
And then this part opens it.
Yeah, so you got a nice clean crack there. So
Okay.
you just hinge off the back of the knuckle. So you kind of push. Yeah. So when you grab it, you go like that.
Yep.
So rather than have your head separate like that, just go like that, and then use this part to be the hinge. So you kind of like.
Oh, the
push-
hinge.
yeah.
Got it.
So here we go. Oh, natural.
Maybe I have done it before, but I don't really pay attention.
Well, you cleared it, man. It's a nice, beautiful whole
Is
egg.
it clean?
Yeah, it's clean. No shell,
Lovely.
no problem
Thank
whatsoever.
you.
So just put those in there as well. And so you got in there olive oil, maple syrup, 2 eggs, and then just add in your dry ingredients, which we've got we've got some chocolate protein powder here, but you usually use cacao, baking powder, and just some all-purpose flour.
How great is maple syrup?
Oh, dude. Well, speaking from a Canadian, an unbiased perspective being an Australian, it is friggin' amazing.
It's really good, and although I love Canadian and specifically Quebec maple syrup, the best one that I've ever tried is actually from Vermont.
Really?
It's so good.
Is that because why is that?
I don't know. Well, there's a nurse at my dad's hospital who has like her own farm of maple trees, and they make their own maple syrup, and they sell it to friends for like $5 for like a massive jar.
Is that hard to say?
What do
Like
you
that,
mean hard to say?
that a North American maple syrup is better than from Canada?
I'm not. You know what? It's like some people say that like David Chang says that the best pizza in the world is in Tokyo. It's like I'm not
does.
precious about that.
Good for you, man.
Like
Good
who
for
gives
you.
a shit?
No, absolutely. If it's there, it's there.
Respect where it came from. But then if somebody else did a better job with it, like that's not your fault.
Well, here's the thing. I find people put pride, and this is a lot in the food industry.
Yeah.
They put pride before reality, so often. Like you're building you've built a restaurant,
It's
right?
ego. Yeah.
You built a restaurant. You're building part of building your brand. Like, do you find that as you even did you deal with the logistics of building a restaurant? Like, how involved were you?
I wanted to be involved in every single component because I've learned that I am a control freak and a perfectionist, but it was actually physically impossible.
Sure.
And so as much as I love architecture and design, I really stuck to food. So then with our mutual friend, Lyle Richards.
Yeah, fantastic, dude.
I worked at out of Wayfare, his restaurant uptown, and we spent a few weeks in the kitchen there kind of developing a menu.
Cool.
I'd never written a menu for a restaurant before. I don't know what the process was like for you, but it was, the recipes were a lot more complex than they needed to be. And then I learned like, oh no, like your carrot has to be used in 3 different recipes in like different ways, and kind of like trying to utilize the same ingredient. What was nice about it is that I learned so much more about like how I can take an ingredient and turn it into something else. So it was a nice learning lesson, but also like, again, just a reminder of like kind of what I do on the show is just like keep it simple. Whenever I try to complicate things, the execs are always saying like simplify it, simplify it.
Which I'm sure is, to be honest, like, well, we're going to find out with your new cookbook, Anthony in the Kitchen's called, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, like your cooking is for the home cook. It is simple as I scoop up a
That is
delectable-
a shit ton of Vegemite.
Dude.
That is the most I've ever seen taken out in one shot.
Go hard or go home, right?
I'm into it.
This is. I'm just going to hold this shot just in case those at home want to have a little boomerang
How
action.
beautiful is that? Do you see the shine on it?
It's glossy.
Do you see the shine?
And it's funny because you got this beautiful, sweet-natured thing, and then we're putting this salty extract going
This
into.
is so good. I can feel my hangover from my early 20s in the best way possible.
Man, you were talking about your restaurant for a second. I think this is a great point for people not even in the food industry to realize. Sometimes you learn stuff for the first time actioning it in work, right?
You learn while you're doing, and I think that's kind of how you figure it out. I'm sure. This is your first restaurant, right?
This is my first one from start to finish. I've been involved in things where I've come in and adjusted menus and done the whole 6 to 1 year kind of situation. Yeah. But I'm like you. I'm a self-taught chef. Mm-hmm. In Australia, I call myself a home cook. Mm-hmm. Over here, people don't understand what I've done to still be a cook, and so it's easy for me to make them understand I'm a chef.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Do you find that interesting?
It's very weirdly polarizing because I get that title a lot where I get chef. And I've had like a good friend of mine actually told me like, no, like you deserve a seat at the table. You can call yourself a chef. If you've prepared food and you were paid for it, you can refer to yourself as a chef. But then I'm kind of a little more old school where it's like my father, for example, is very sensitive about like chiropractors referring to themselves as doctors.
Sure.
Because he has a PhD and he's a physician. So for me, it's more of like respect to chefs that I've actually worked for or under or like in their restaurants where it's like, I don't want to disrespect them. But maybe it's like an imposter syndrome thing too, and I'm just covering my ass.
See, here's the thing, man. I find that, and this is again a relation between all Commonwealth, so England, Australian, and Canadians.
Incredible humility.
Yeah, honestly, we do have tall poppy syndrome.
We're so humble.
We are so humble. We have tall poppy syndrome. We don't have this
totally
ability to be proud about what we've done. And not to say that what you're saying is incorrect by any means. Like, call yourself a home cook, and I totally think that is a phenomenal achievement of what you've done. But for me, it was funny. I actually was doing this live on Good Morning America, and someone asked me, like, I've done all this stuff, and someone said, you're an amazing chef. And I said, oh, no, I'm just a cook. And I didn't say, no, I'm just a cook. I said, I'm a cook. And they're like, oh, you don't think much of yourself then. And it made me realize something. It's like, it's actually, I'm not trying to disrespect other chefs by not doing the trade and going to culinary school.
Right.
But I'm actually part of the movement of trying to do exactly what they're doing. And so I'm owning the fact that my message stands exactly for what they're trying to achieve. I'm just doing it in a different way, potentially.
Right.
But that was a big battle because, as Canadians can relate to, we all have this struggle to really stand up and say truly what we've done and say how good we are at it.
Right. I mean, an actor can be professionally trained and go to conservatory, or they can be self-taught and just like read theory and took acting classes. And like, is one actor more of an actor than the other?
No. But
I think doctors are the only exception. You
100%.
definitely want to go to med school before you call yourself a doctor. But other than that, and it's also a very American thing. It's sort of like that free will and be able to like pursue your dream and do it in whatever way you can. Like
Sure.
the rules are different here, right? It's kind of like,
Definitely.
It's still the wild, wild west in many ways.
And actually growing up from Canada to then moving here, did you realize you had to make a transition in doing that? And in today, do you still continue to find yourself having to adjust maybe things you learned through your childhood into, restaurant, books, brand partnerships? Do you have to kind of change your demeanor?
Change my demeanor based on like what it is that I'm doing.
Just maybe more like be direct, essentially.
Oh, yeah, directness is something, it's an ongoing thing, and one of the favorite topics of conversation my therapist and I have to discuss every week. Before the show, it's pretty shocking to see like how my confidence has kind of gone up. And I used to have a trouble distinguishing between confidence and cockiness, where I thought like if I address my needs, then I'm being a dick. But now where I have a life where I literally have, if I sum up all of like agents, publicists, assistant, people that I work with on a daily basis, it's like over 20 people. It's crazy. And if I don't address my needs, I'm gonna get kind of lost in the mix and people are gonna start making decisions for me. So I have to be sort of direct and being like, this isn't what I need, or like these are my needs, and like how can we get them met?
So as you've developed this, I guess your job, we'll call it your job, which is also your life, you've understood the importance of what is truly true to what you believe in, right?
Of course, and I think Queer Eye taught me that as well. Going in for all the auditions that I went in for prior were always for a character, and I was always trying to make myself a certain way so that I was liked, or so that I was chosen, or so that I got that validation from the other side. But with Queer Eye, what I learned is it was sort of like, no, like we want you. Lean into who you are as a person, and that's actually good enough. Which is weird because whenever I actually do meditate, my favorite line is, I am enough, I have enough. Which I preach that to myself so much, but it's so incredibly hard to actually believe and to take that in, that I've had to just lean into like, no, like don't, just be the weird guy who like loves corgis and talking about cheese way more often than he needs to. And I think like even if I look at my castmates, like we all sort of have our quirks and we all learn really quickly that those are the things that we're most embraced for. Is like all of the stuff that seems like the most personal or like the most uncool. Like that's the stuff people can relate to because it's personal and it's real. People are smart. I did endorsements at the beginning of my career that was really just like, I'm a yes man, we're saying yes to everything, and they didn't make sense, and I know the feedback that I got from them. And now as everything sort of develops and grows and I'm picking on more meaningful projects, I can really get behind them, and I know that there is sort of like a story or something that kind of like ties in, that makes it organic and real, and I can promote it better and people respond to it better as well. If you're uncomfortable with yourself, people know that when you walk into a room. But if you know who you are and if you have a strong point of view, it just puts people at ease because they don't have to get uncomfortable.
And it's also like, as you said, your audience, they know you. So like all of a sudden, if you're doing something you're truly passionate about, they're going to want to know about this brand and get behind them. Because you're like, what's one of the brands you're working with right now?
Ollie Gummies, for example.
Awesome. So for obvious reasons, you may have a tooth that loves those sweets, or like, something that's nostalgic to you, and it makes complete sense. If it didn't, your audience would be like, there's no way
it would make zero sense.
100%.
I'm somebody who is completely sugar deprived. I don't let myself have it. I'm also not as crazy about it because I really love salty more than sweet.
Sure.
But I think it's adorable that they're gummies. Also, I need my vitamins, and I have days where I do not eat well, even though it's something that I promote that I have to constantly remind myself when I'm running around. But like, I do travel with, I have the whole range. I think there are 12 different kinds. And I do this thing every night where I like take a little cup and I put all my little gummies, and it's like my little treat that I have with my chamomile tea.
Which is like you. That's you right there.
And that's kind of like who I am. There's something childish and cute about it and nostalgic about having vitamins as a kid. And at the same time, like, we need to get that stuff in. And also their melatonin gummies are the best. They help me sleep and give me really weird dreams, and I love them.
Man, that is awesome. And so much purpose there that people can learn from is the fact that, say, just being true and passionate behind something, whatever, whether it be someone who's got their own brand in professional careers or in their own brand as they build something, learning to stay true to who you are is a part of that brand that people will benefit from.
It's such an introspective process. It's kind of like, there's irony there because it's like as everything gets bigger and there are more like, proverbial and literal cooks in the kitchen, you have to lean in even more so to like who you are as an individual, because otherwise you just get lost. And then it's like the age-old question, like, who am I?
100%.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, you talk about what you say no to. Now, you are very adamant to call yourself a home cook, yet you wanted to do a restaurant. Is that, or how did that come about? Because like, I want to...
Yeah, the restaurant again was something that started out based on a conversation. It wasn't anything, I never wanted to be a restaurateur.
Right.
It wasn't part of I know how much work it is. I know the thankless hours, and I know the percentage of restaurants that don't make it. Like, it's freaking hard.
Yeah, dude.
And like, yeah, so basically we had this like workout club with a few friends of mine, and then we would go actually to Lyle and Eric Marx's restaurant uptown at Wayfair, and we would just be like, okay, we want like a grilled salmon and I want a poached egg on it with like Brussels sprouts. And it was like, why is nobody doing this kind of food as like healthy, fast casual? And then we decided, there's a location that opened up and it became available, and it was like, do you want to do the food? And I was like, that's literally the only part that I can contribute to. So we developed a menu, and then, yeah, I have a restaurant.
Yeah, dude.
It's like I have days sometimes where I'm just like, oh shit, right.
Yeah.
That's a thing that exists.
So like, this is, for those who don't know, Village Den, West Village, opposite Equinox. So if you're looking to do a workout, go to your workout, just walk straight out and head, honestly, walk out the door of Equinox Greenwich Village and go straight.
Pick up your chicken scotch egg or your Thai chicken bowl, get a smoothie.
There you go. Straight up. And it's like, it's exactly what everyone needs on a daily basis. And that's one aspect. As you continue to do that, that's always going to be teetering on your head. The restaurant, the restaurant, the restaurant, restaurant. So that's a commitment.
It's always there, and I get constant reminders on Instagram. People love to tag me whenever they have the food, which I love.
That's great.
And that's kind of my way, no matter where I am in the world, or whether I'm filming or on press or in my bed. I get to see these dishes, and like the most important thing for me is I bring this up a lot. There's an article in the New York Times about David McMillan when he talks about Balthazar and the fries, and why the fries are so damn good, and how many they sell of the steak and frites every day. And because the fries are made exactly the same way every single time. The most important word in a restaurant is consistency. The dish has to be exactly the same, because when somebody comes in and if they have a shit experience, they're not going to come back. But if they come back and they know what that taste profile is going to be like, and they come in and it's the same every time, like, that brings them joy.
Can I ask you what it was like when you got your first someone told you the food wasn't that good at Village Den?
The first time, wait, what was it? Oh, yeah. It was, so we have this this really lovely, it's more of a winter salad because it uses citrus, and I love fennel all year round. Awesome. Even though I hate licorice, but that's...
I'm the same.
Hate licorice, love fennel. Parents love licorice, but I don't really get it. But I like Australian licorice because it's like strawberry and apple, and it's a little more fruity. And Trader Joe's has an amazing one. Anyway, somebody basically posted a photo of a dish being bland, and there's this tahine, which is like a chili, lime zest, kind of like a spice that was on it, and it didn't have the pistachios in it, and there was like a shit ton of scallion, and I was just like, that is not what we discussed.
Right.
And you know, when you're opening up a restaurant, you're figuring it out. It's like your vision has to translate to sort of like anybody who's in the kitchen, and that's hard. People come in with their own ways of preparing things. It's really hard to be consistent, especially I think in the first year when you really try to solidify like the key points, getting rid of the dishes that don't work. Like we had some dishes that I thought were going to be incredibly successful that we had to cut out because they weren't performing. Yeah, it's hard definitely when people don't have the experience that you want them to have. But I've learned to not take it in and take it personally as much, and it's just sort of like, okay, how are we going to fix it?
That's so cool to
Where's
hear,
the solution?
That's so cool because you can't please everyone. I've learned this for so long, and yet
it's the biggest lesson ever is that you can't make everyone happy.
It's so annoying though. I want to make everyone happy.
I know.
It's just so
Wait,
frustrating.
you have 2 brothers?
I got 2 brothers.
Are they older?
I'm the middle one.
Oh, you're the middle one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm the youngest, and apparently the youngest in a family always needs to be heard.
Right.
And that's like a thing for me.
Sure.
And I need everyone to love me.
Right, there you go.
And we do it with food because it's perfect.
Oh, man,
Who doesn't get excited about good food?
Exactly. And
it's
so
sad but beautiful at the same time.
When you hear someone said, oh, I didn't have this, and you're just like, all right, okay, you've got to suck it up. And you're right, can't take it personally. Because as much as the food, unfortunately for you and myself, the food at the restaurant is a representation of the chef or the person who puts the menu together.
Correct.
And so when
you're not a garbage person. The dish was just shit at any given particular time.
Yeah, exactly.
And some people really want their salmon well done, which I'm never going to understand.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't need to.
Yeah.
It's fine.
This is the way it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how it is. It's supposed to be raw in the center.
Oh, that's exactly the way salmon should be. I must
Eat
admit.
your salmon skin.
Yeah. Why? Oh, dude, worst review we ever got. We got a 1 star on Yelp because we didn't.
Why do you go on there? It's like Twitter.
Oh, man.
Why do you hate yourself so much that you look at Yelp reviews?
One of my coworkers told me about it.
No, there should be rules. They don't read you. They don't do that.
It was so bad. We got a 1 star review because we did not put cutlery in a bag that had a beautiful toast and an amazing muffin, but we got a 1 star review because we didn't give them cutlery.
This person ordered toast and a muffin.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say.
And on that note, we're going to take a break. I'm going to put this, so I've poured in, I've actually prepared this earlier, the brownie mix, pour it into any form of brownie tin, and then we have it at 350 Fahrenheit, cook for about 30 minutes, and we're going to serve it up just after the
Low
break.
heat, let it puff up. Great.
Boom. And we're back. Okay, so my man, this round is all about the quickfire as we serve up a brownie. So the brownie's cooked. Let's give you a little plate, and I just hope
it's like a brownie cake slice.
Right, it is. You know what? Can I be honest?
Yeah.
I don't have a brownie tin, so I put it in a cake tin. That's why we have a brownie cake.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, you work with what you got.
Right.
Right?
Straight up, man. 100%.
You have to adapt and like evolve. Like it's like don't be so precious about having like I always tell people that.
Right. Look at Simba. You know, he was in the wild. He learned Hakuna Matata.
Are you making a Lion King reference right now?
I just saw the thing the other day when I watched Avengers, and
Very
I'm so
good.
excited.
Very
I'm
good.
excited. Are you gonna hold it in with your mouth? Do you want a fork?
No.
Yeah.
Don't be silly.
Brownie cheers. 3, 2,
Cheers.
1, bang. I can smell the Vegemite. It's a little bit there. I want more Vegemite though.
The chocolate is really nice in there.
It's probably a little bit dense though. I need to work on that.
I like it. It's like a pound cake.
It is a pound cake.
It's very good for breakfast. I would have this with. I'd fuck this up with coffee.
What about would you put a glaze through it?
You know, it wouldn't be terrible. Would it be too aggressive to have? Actually, I would put like softened butter and a little Vegemite on it.
I don't think we have any butter. Fuck.
We can think about it.
Okay.
You don't have to do it, you know?
That's great though.
But it's like a good thought to have.
That's a great thought.
But that's a recipe that works is always, I always think like, oh, what would I want? Like, what would even make this better?
Yes.
And I'm like that with
100%.
my own food, and I think it's nice to be honest about like, oh, like what could even make this?
100%.
Like some berries would be nice with this, some raspberries.
Berries are good.
A
I
little
do
bit of
like
nice tartness.
I definitely think so. I think even if we do melted butter, glaze it over the top, And then like, you know how you got the pound cake look and the butter's just glazing through and then the Vegemite just smeared all around on the top?
It's so uniform. It's incredible. Like this doesn't crumb very much compared to like the way a cake does. And that's a protein powder?
Yeah, 100%. The way that it will hold it together. Yeah, 100%.
This is nice.
Thanks, man.
If I didn't like it, I wouldn't have eaten the whole thing.
I appreciate it.
This is really good.
Thanks. Oh, the edges are what has the Vegemite. Yeah?
Why?
I don't know. It's like they expanded and went to the edges. Like, I'm going to hang out on the outside, bro.
They're outliers.
Vegemite
Vegemite is an outlier.
It is. It is. Oh. Okay, myth debunked. All right.
Way too proud of that reference. I don't know why. But anyway.
All right, let's go into some quickfire, man. So.
Okay, great. I'll start.
Okay. Cookies. Sorry.
You're a very healthy eater.
Yeah.
What's your gross thing?
My naughty thing?
Yeah.
Ooh. It's gonna sound so bad. Like my spaghetti bolognese. Like I don't have waffles with chocolate doused in icing sugar. I'm not into that. I'm into
You're salty over sweet.
Yeah, I do have a sweet tooth, but I'm more likely to go into my saltiness field of.
And what's your ratio of your sauce to pasta?
Yeah, so usually.
Are you a carber?
I'm honestly a 1-to-1, but you know when you get a salad bowl and everyone mixes it, makes a salad bowl. That's how much my food is for my save. That's how, like, I'm not talking like when we used to sit at the table with mum. She used to have a salad bowl for each of the three boys, and now I keep that tradition when I come to America. So I have a 1-to-1 ratio of sauce to red sauce.
Mine's 3-to-1.
Of red sauce too.
Yeah, I'll have sauce with just a little bit of pasta because like if you can have more meat or cheese, why would you fill your belly with pasta? That's how my mind works.
That's a very smart thought.
I could eat bolognese like just as a soup.
Oh, you could just have it 100%. But how much cheese ratio is there? So
An offensive amount.
Offensive amount. Like
there have to be rinds cooked into the sauce to 100%. Give it like that nice salt.
Definitely.
And then my microplane until my wrist is just sore. And then you fold it in and it basically becomes a cheese sauce.
With a
bit
bit red.
It's never too much cheese for
It's
me.
never enough though. I feel like I sit down at the dinner table afterwards after I put a mount on and I'm halfway through I'm like, this needs more cheese. But I'm okay about it.
Yeah.
You know? Especially when I'm training for a marathon, so that's totally fine. So what's yours?
Bolognese is like your thing?
Roasted cashews? That's fucking pathetic.
Oh dear God.
I know.
I'm sorry, I love you, but that's lame.
Hit me.
So mine is, it's the $2 bags of the tortillas that aren't fully cooked through. And stop eating, when people eat soft tacos and they don't heat up those tortillas on a pan, why are you doing that to yourself? It's not fully cooked through.
It's going to cause you to constipate.
It's horrible in all the ways.
Yeah, it doesn't taste good.
I'm not angry, I'm passionate.
That's great.
So I take 2 of those and then there's a really nice, my father sends me Cabot cheddar all the time because he buys it at Costco and it's a lot cheaper.
It's like a moment with your father?
That's like, yeah, that and maple syrup. Okay. And so he sends me, there's a really nice habanero cheddar that is spicy AF. And I will basically grate on a large box grater because it's a little too soft for a microplane. About like 3/4, I do the whole block.
Yeah.
In between 2 pieces of tortilla, and then I make a quesadilla, and the cheese oozes out on the side, and then you fold it over so you have crispy cheese. It's kind of like a weird Taco Bell situation. And I'll have that with a tub of full-fat sour cream, and then just heaps of cilantro. And then my favorite store-bought salsa, I think it's called Gringo Mountain. And they put, weird name, I didn't come up with it. And they put apple cider vinegar in it. So there's like a nice acidity to the salsa. And I will destroy that.
Will you sit that down and watch Queer Eye and just smash it?
I do not watch myself, but Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
There you go.
Can I just say, like, I was waiting for the end on your beautiful layered quesadilla cheese situation that I feel is more cheese than anything.
It's basically
it just
cheese.
kept going.
It's basically a frico with just a little bit of like
there
tortilla.
You go. Yeah. There you go. Far out. Well, that leads me to my next question. If you were a food ingredient meal, what would you be? And I have learnt since about 40 minutes ago, you talked about avocados not actually being what everyone thinks is something you love. So it can't be an avocado.
It's not an avocado. We shot 16 episodes. They were not in succession. of how they were filmed and how they were presented. But the 2 episodes got bumped to the top, although the first episode was the first one we ever filmed. And it was just basically like one avocado recipe after the next. I'm not gonna belabor it. I'm over it. And I do love avocados, but I'm not as obsessed with them as I've been made out to be.
So,
as the paraphernalia out there on Amazon.com would lead one to think or suggest.
Of course.
But if I were to be one food, I think it would be a beautiful, like a stick of like cold Normandy butter.
Because you can do so much with it.
You can do so much with it. You can just shave it with like the dull end of a knife and have a nice little ribbon of cold butter that you put in your mouth. You can put it on a beautiful loaf of bread.
Vegemite.
On Vegemite. You can do so much with it. And butter is like, it's just the ultimate decadence.
And I do think the foundation of cooking came from butter. And I feel like that's so nostalgic to you.
Yeah.
So that makes like such a
I love my
answer.
olive oil, but I love my butter.
Yeah, especially from Normandy. Those
Yes.
cows.
Yes.
They know what's going on. They eat
Japanese
the right
butter, we haven't even touched on.
I've never had Japanese butter.
Hokkaido has the best dairy I've ever had, and I don't have a sweet tooth, but their ice cream is like it.
I'm going there in
Anyway.
20 for the Olympics, so I'll be making sure to have some of that.
Okay, we have to talk about that.
Okay, and I have another question here. It's a bit more related to probably more your entrepreneurship and what you do throughout the day. So you have so much going on with work. We'll just say work, because that's brand partnerships, social media coverage.
It's the umbrella tree word for everything. Yeah, work.
Right, let's say work. And so for you then, as you're learning, there has to be Anthony time. There has to be the time that you get for you, your creativity, for you to enjoy your beautiful quesadilla mountain of cheese. How do you control the controllable to ensure that something like that happens throughout the day?
It's an ongoing thing. I think it's a daily reprieve and sort of like trying to find nuggets of time where I can actually be with myself. It's weirdly hard to do for me because I'm surrounded by people all day and every day.
Of course.
And then I always think like, oh, I want time on my own. But as soon as I'm on my own, like, did you go to camp as a kid?
I did, yes.
So when you're at camp, you meet all these best friends and you're around so many people, and then suddenly you come home and everything is kind of quiet and it's like weirdly lonely.
Do you get FOMO?
I get terrible. I get FOMO and I also have FOBO, which is like the new thing. It's fear of a better option.
Huh.
Yeah. Like I'm very bad at decision making because I always think like, is this the best choice?
Sure.
But that's a whole other topic of conversation. But it's tough. It's finding time to actually like be with myself. A lot of it will be spent like pacing around, and I will spend 30 minutes figuring out. I have a record player, and that's like my latest thing that I'm super obsessed with. I just pick up as many records as I possibly can.
Cool.
And I will spend like 20 to 30 minutes figuring out like, am I in the mood for like Maggie Rogers, or do I want to bring out like my old Miles Davis record? And it's like decision making is like very hard.
It's so tough, man. It's especially with you. I think another question I'm leading to is you have so many people you've inspired that just on the general street, you'd be walking past and everyone would see you maybe once every so often, right? Or for the first time and want to say hi. And within yourself, you see you every day. But you know that for them, it's the first time they've seen you. They want to say something. You want to give them their all for you, right? How do you maintain that throughout your day?
As an extroverted introvert, it's very challenging. Like I loved taking the subway and reading books on the subway, and that's not something that's as easy to do because you're in a confined space. So if one person comes for a photo, it suddenly turns into like several, and you can't really leave. Yeah, it was at first I had a lot of days, and I still have this sometimes where I leave the house and I forget, and then I'm like walking and I haven't showered yet, and I'm like going to pick up a coffee or something, or going to the den to meet the guys, and then suddenly like I get stopped by someone. I'm like, oh right, this is a thing. And at first it was really hard, and I would get really overwhelmed, and I would come home and I would have like I love a good cry. It's so cathartic for me. And I would just like scream into my pillow and cry, then I'd be like, oh, I feel so much better now. And so now I'm kind of used to it and I'm more prepared for it. But what I always try to remind myself is like, to them, it's like they're seeing a unicorn. It's somebody who they watch on a show that is very emotional, that's all about uplifting people. And to them, it's an important moment. And my thing is that when I start interacting, it suddenly turns into 30 minutes, and then I'm late for the next thing that I have going on. So I always try to keep it like sort of like succinct, know that there is a photo that will be taken, and just remember that this is like it's important to them. And it's at the same time, it's not like I'm an actor where I'm playing a part and someone's like, oh, I love this thing that you did. People are coming up to me and they're saying like, I love this thing that you said on the show, which is me.
That's exactly
It's just
right.
a more caffeinated version of me. Like, how can you not be grateful and like excited about that and like just happy about it? Like they're liking me as an individual, which is so validating. And I don't let that get to my head, but at the same time, it's sort of like, oh, that's really nice. Right?
It's gratifying, man.
Yeah.
But also, you, as you continue to add more strings to your bow and things that you do, that's still part of importance of your audience. Your audience, aside from Queer Eye, is going to continue to grow with what you do.
Right.
And so, like, you know, whatever adventures you have going on, you are now building Anthony. You're going to be building Queer Eye as it continues to grow, but aside from that, you have to step outside of that and continue to grow the Anthony brand.
Yes, there's that, and I think it's a tricky balance of knowing that I have the bigger that things get and the more interactions that I have in the street, like especially when a season comes out for about a month afterwards, it's like sheer madness, and I'll probably take a lot more Ubers than I would because I'm a walker. I love walking from the Upper West Side down to like Tribeca.
Good
like it's
for
my
you,
favorite
man.
thing to do.
That's awesome.
I mean, I love New York, and it's like such a great city to just. I do my thinking when I walk, and I listen to my music. But as things get bigger, it's even more important for me to have like moments where I like even take one day. I've been doing this thing now where like I'll fly and go visit my sister or my dad, or go with like my best friend, and we'll go on like a one-day trip because that's the only amount of time that I have, where we'll spend almost more time on the plane than we actually will anywhere. And I just have like that one day where I completely detach. I don't look at my phone. I give everyone a heads up that I'm not going to be responding, and I just have time to like go to a cafe and like do like all the normal things that I miss doing that I haven't been able to do in a while. Like grocery shop.
Like grocery?
I love grocery shopping. It's my favorite thing.
Good luck to
And
see
so-
you at Union Square Market.
That was?
Union Square Market.
No, I haven't been.
You've never been, what?
No, I've been, but I'm saying like since the show has come
of
out,
course.
it's not something that I've been able to do because
Sure,
it's like
sure.
literally, it's like a food center. And it's like I like to go and like, you know, look at the peaches and cherries are going to be coming up soon. And it was such an important part of my weekly ritual when I had a normal 10 to 6 job when I worked as a gallery director. On Saturdays, I always went to the market. And on most Saturdays, I'm not even in town. So it's like I miss those things and it's fun, but you just try to, they become all the more precious and important now that they are so rare.
100%. And I think, you know, it's no surprise that as you continue to grow, that importance of that time to you is becomes even more important.
Right.
So the fact that you're nailing that now and, you know, catching up with people to truly
Trying to nail
it. Which is hard though,
It's
man.
it's a
It's
daily
always gonna be
reprieve.
hard.
Some days I'm a lot better.
Like you get opportunity to go
Right.
on a podcast with Dan Churchill and
Yeah.
you're just like, I can't toss this
Have
up.
somebody make food for me. This is really nice.
Man, that's awesome. And so speaking of growing, you're releasing your first cookbook in September, which is now, called Anthony in the Kitchen.
Yes.
And this book, as you alluded to with one of the recipes earlier, is truly you in the kitchen, home cooking environment.
Right.
Is it something you look at tangibly and just go and almost cry with happiness?
I was crying a lot while I was making it because I decided to write the book while filming 2 consecutive seasons. So we would have like 10, 12-hour shoot days.
Nice.
And then I would come home and I averaged 3 to 5 recipes a night. And I've never written down a single recipe. Like I'll watch Giada De Laurentiis make something on Food Network, and then a month later the recipe pops in my mind and I'm like, oh, I want to make that thing.
It's the hardest thing.
And then I just go and like kind of like make my own version of it. I've never measured anything.
And then
it
your
was
publicist goes, oh, Anthony, I need you to remeasure this. You're like,
Right.
I added a pinch of this.
Right. It was like a small handful. It's
Yeah.
like, well, you also have massive hands, so what the hell does that mean? So I had a woman on in Kansas City, and I had another lovely helper on 2 in the East Coast, who like I would basically relay the recipe. I would measure it my way. They would do their way, and then we would both make it and like exchange notes and FaceTime and like kind of like compare. And so that part of it was super exhausting, and it was also 100 recipes, which felt like a lot. But when you think about it and then you think about your life and all the food that you've made, suddenly you realize like, wow, I've made a lot of different things. And a big approach to it was, because I didn't know how I was going to come up with 100, but my editor from the get-go, she was like, you make every single thing personal. It's the only way that you operate. You're all or nothing. Either you really care about something or you don't give a shit. So think about the recipes that have shaped you. So it's like my Polish heritage, stuff that I was ashamed of when I was, my identity was basically like immigrant kid with a weird name living in West Virginia.
Matzo ball soup?
Matzo ball soup. No, I wish. I told you, I'm like Jew-ish,
Yeah.
not like fully Jewish. So it's like all the Polish food that I was ashamed of that now I make using a bit of French technique and making it a little more contemporary and a little less pork and sour cream heavy. Not that I have any shade against any of those two ingredients, but it was incredibly personal. And I think my favorite part of it was actually, once the recipes were done, was just writing the introduction to each, because it was sort of like, I need to tell you why this recipe is important to me. And there's like a pork chop that I tried when I was in Mykonos for the first time, that I was in 2 separate relationships, and we went there and tried this pork chop, and like our minds were blown, to like food that I ate as a waiter at Fatty Crab, where they have their famous like Malaysian chili crab, which like the place doesn't exist anymore, but people need to know about how amazing this chili crab sauce is. To Polish food, to stuff I ate as a student when I was broke and I literally had like $30, $40 a week, and I would just overdraft to TD Bank and I would have a $35 overdraft fee, and I would have to like text my dad, and I ate a shit ton of peas.
Good for you, man.
And canned tuna, but
Peas?
always in olive oil.
You had peas?
I love peas.
Wow.
You don't like peas?
I think if I was to say the one ingredient vegetable-wise
Yeah.
that I don't spend a lot of love for, it would be
Come on.
peas.
A bag of frozen peas, couple of dabs of butter, some Maldon salt and fresh mint in a bowl. I could eat that all day.
I mean,
every day.
Okay.
It's so good.
I
But I don't even know if they're that delicious, but I just think back, because they were literally 99 cents for a bag. And when I was a student, I would just like go to the bodega, pick a bag of those up, mix it with tuna, some fresh oregano and lemon juice, and it was like, okay, this is dinner tonight.
That's awesome, man.
And so I have like such fond memories of that, and I'll do that even now when I come back and I'm in New York. It's weird, I was about to say that I visit New York because I'm
Living it out.
here, so that all over the place. But like I'll come back and I'll just take a bag out of the freezer, and I'm like connecting with myself when I first moved to New York, and
That's
it's sort of
so
like,
awesome.
oh, this is nice, and it's nostalgic, because I think that's what food is.
100%.
It connects us to where we came from. It connects us to what our parents prepared for us, to food that we had on dates when we were broke, when we weren't broke. Like it's at the center of everything for me. It's what I think about more than even myself, and I have narcissistic tendencies. So it's something that it's followed me everywhere, and I get to do it in a cookbook, which is like kind of weird and crazy and vulnerable and raw, and it's like my version of a memoir.
Well, mate, you've written a book.
Yeah.
So I hope you're prepared, because like this is even for yourself, because the feeling of people cooking your recipes, and
Right.
it is one of the most gratifying things to see. I've had people propose to their girlfriends over meals in my books.
Wow.
So you'll get this amazing touch
Yeah.
of reality where you got people coming into the village den,
Right.
you're like seeing families grow that way. Then you have this other side where you are creating an opportunity for that table conversation through your food.
Right.
And that is something that
No,
is
it's like, I
gratifying.
remember I made, this simple, a dish that I had at Italian restaurants growing up in Montreal. It was very simple. Yes, it does feature avocado, but it was supremes of grapefruit, where, you don't have any of the pith, and it's just perfect little segments in sort of like a little concentric pattern with avocado and a nice little simple vinaigrette. And I taught somebody how to make that, and it was like an afterthought. I didn't put too much effort into it. And the amount of DMs you're getting from like Brazil, the Philippines, and people who are making this, and like, I did not know that these things belong together, but they do, and it's delicious. It's like, you just made that thing that you saw me make. And I didn't even invent it. I'm just like, I feel like as cooks and as chefs, we're like messengers, because we all learn from somebody, and we're passing it on for somebody else to learn or experience.
It's so true, man.
Like
Absolutely.
We're not,
We're taking what farmers and Mother Earth gave to us and just using what we know.
Right,
to
absolutely.
present it.
Yeah, and putting our own little personal spin on it. And I think, so it's really weird that it's like in this one book. And I remember when I got it and I took it out of the packaging and I got the first copy of it, and I just looked at it and I was like, wow, this feels so raw.
And you look really good on the cover.
Thanks.
You looked really good, dude. I was like,
it was a great photographer.
Yeah.
But also like, and just like, I mean, there were some, our photographers, Paul Brisman, and he's a guy, but there were so many women on the set, and I've always worked much better with women. I feel like it's always a much more collaborative medium, because there's less of like ego and like other things to deal with. It's a lot of Queer Eyes actually run by mostly women. So I have a brilliant co-author, Mindy Fox, who is like fantastic. She's done tons of cookbooks.
I think I've seen Mindy. She's seen her work everywhere.
Oh, she's a legend. Yeah. And so she was there to kind of like reel me in when my ADHD would get the best of me and be like, no, focus, simplify, remove 3 ingredients from this. Have you tried using like, I'm trying to give an example, but like instead of like different peppers, or like, can we try green pepper instead of black because you've used it a lot? And like, I know you put Maldon on everything, but let's try something different. And it's like just somebody who's there constantly pushing me to like want to be better. And it's a delicate balance, because I think my leanings are a very specific way, but then I had somebody to remind me, like, no, like the countries, like people in the Midwest are going to be making these recipes, so you don't want to be, you know, talking about how sumac is important and you can't have a substitute for it, but like that's not available everywhere. And there's something humbling and a reminder that like, oh, not everybody has that, so just like keep it simple. Food shouldn't be elitist, which people get super intimidated by, but that like really pisses me off because I think that it should be accessible to everybody.
100%. Cooking brings so much to people.
100%. Yeah.
Man, I'm so excited to, you know, have this book and see what you're already doing and see it help manifest another side that is just going to have so much influence on people. And obviously, we can pick this book up from wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold.
You're doing a tour as well with it as well?
Yes, on tour in the US and the UK.
Unreal. Where would you find that at? Williams-Sonoma or yourself?
Williams-Sonoma, I think on my Instagram profile. Now we're in September right now, right?
Yeah, we are.
So you can probably check that in my bio, but if not, if you just like Google Williams-Sonoma and Antony, there's a whole landing page with all the dates of where tickets are available.
That's super exciting.
And pick it up, make some Polish food and other stuff, and let me know how you like it or how you don't like it.
Be honest. Give us that feedback that we love.
Absolutely.
So you got Village Den.
Yes.
Anything else happening on that, son?
Village Den right now we're just developing the fall menu.
Fantastic.
That's what we're focusing on
is
figuring out and trying to keep it as seasonal as possible.
And then you're off to Philly?
And then no, we're done with we did Philly over the summer because we're in September now, so we just wrapped,
we did,
actually.
Of course,
yeah,
my bad. Good for hey, I like what you did. Picking up what you did down. That's good.
So we'll see what's next, and our next season that we're really excited about is our Japan season of Queer Eye, which is going to be coming out soon, which I'm really excited for people to see.
That's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see the promotional tour of that one.
We had a full translator. It was it was really very intense and kind of like it was an incredible time.
Have you been to the Philippines yet? Have you been to the Philippines?
No, but I really want to go.
Oh my, okay, dude. Okay, I had 7 bodyguards. What are you going to have? When I did my show there, I'd go to the bathroom and I'd have 7 big Filipinian dudes walking around with me, making sure, if I went to get a coffee, because they have the fans are so passionate and they jump barricades to get to you.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what they're going to do for you, man. You should, I don't know, call the CIA.
I just want to have some that awesome blood sausage, and then the rice and the banana leaf.
And you have this thing called, I can't remember what it's called. It's this not Korean. It's pork cheek gristle with this. It's like gochujang. Oh my god!
I love gochujang.
Oh, dude, it's just.
Also featured in the cookbook, gochujang on a cauliflower steak with medjool dates and cilantro and almonds. I don't know if they're more or not.
I'm very impressed that you can recount that of your 100. Well, man, on that note, it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice sitting here and
enjoying a brownie,
enjoying this
Vegemite.
Awesome freaking. It was a brownie cake with Vegemite. I'm gonna start adding this to sweets. You've inspired me.
I'm gonna get Vegemite chatting to you. And so obviously, if you did not know, you can reach and see Antony at Antony on Instagram. Website?
ANTONI. There is a website for. Actually, yeah, you can go to ANTONYPOROWSKI.com. And you can look at dates for where I'm going to be promoting the cookbook,
there you go.
Wherever tickets are available.
Because we're now in September, we can make sure
it's September, so it's starting. The tour is where we're starting it right now. Starting to get cool in New York.
Appreciate you being in here.
Thank you so much.
Man.
Thank you.
I
really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.